is Thea Deer, and I'm a clinical herbalist, author of a book called Wisdom of the Plant Devas, Herbal Medicine for a New Earth. I'm also a singer-songwriter, and I've been touring and performing for, oh my gosh, decades, and just released my 5th CD, which I'm very excited about. So I have a track of music and medicine.
Nice, nice. And how old are you right now?
64.
64, woohoo! Okay.
The Beatles song about that somewhere.
There might be. Okay, cool. And then let's go ahead and jump into the experience that feels alive for you, the intuitive experience that feels alive for you, that is this life-altering, view-shifting. It took you into a whole nother perspective in the world. And just tell me whatever you want about that, and we're going to do this organically. So I'll be taking notes and then guide us into the process of revealing more about it.
Well, I think the most life-altering, I mean, there's been a few, I'm sure, as you know, but, that was initially, that put me on such a different path, was during my first Saturn return. So I was 30 years old, and it was when I left my home of origin. So I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. I had lived there for 30 years. And it was an event that happened that took me to California. And it was when I died to my life as I had known it completely. And but it was it started me on a whole new track.
Okay.
So that would be the event would be leaving Miami.
Okay. And then what led you to know that you should leave Miami?
So I had met a shaman healer, and it's kind of, you know, I'm going to see how I can make this story as short as I can. But I had been struggling with health issues and felt like I was dying. And I knew that this particular healer was coming to Miami, and I wanted to ask him for a healing. And I knew that in order to be clear enough to do that, intuitively, I knew that I needed to stop smoking marijuana.
Okay.
And, you know, I think probably marijuana and sugar are the only addictions I've had in my life. Of course, we're going back a ways now, so this is when I was 30, but I had tried so many times to set it down and hadn't been able to. And I didn't know at the time I was using it to medicate depression and anger. But regardless, I knew that I needed to ask for healing. I wanted to be clear in order to do that. So I laid it down. I hadn't smoked in I don't know how many weeks before he arrived. And when he came, I had no idea that the healing that I would receive would look like what it did, which was him inviting me we fell in love. That's what happened.
Okay.
And he invited me to join him in California. And I was in a failing marriage at the time, as was he. But the sign, so, you know, this came through, there were many signs, because when something that big is up, I'm always asking for the signs. I mean, that's something that I've done for most of my life. And one of the big signs that came, there were many, but it was a dream that I had where now this all happened very quickly for us, and I had never been to California. I had never been to this place. I had no idea where he lived or what it looked like. But I had this dream where I flew into his apartment, and it was very specific, where I saw the building, I saw the wrought iron gate that opened into a courtyard, I saw the stairs leading up to the 2nd floor apartment, I saw where the apartment was, I walked through the door, I saw the layout of the interior, I went into his bedroom, and as we were connecting physically, I woke up. The next day he calls me and he tells me, I had this fever last night. I was burning up with a fever, and you came into my bedroom.
Oh, wow.
And then I shared with him what I had seen. And he went, oh my God, that is exactly where I live. And that is exactly how it's laid out. And we both knew right then. And I got chills just telling this story right now.
Me too. I got chills too.
Yeah, they don't lie. So it's like we knew that there was something much bigger than both of us happening at that time, because it was huge for me to leave the only home I had ever known and a family. I had 2 kids. I was married. I had 2 kids. And to like literally do something like that was so huge. Shortly after that, everything blew up in a whole different way. So it was literally me making a decision very quickly to get on a plane and go. I mean, it happened like that. So, and that was when I heard a voice that said, go now. It was really, really clear, because you can imagine there was a tremendous amount of, conflict around leaving a home and a family and all of that, and a family of origin and all that. Sure. But when it came to that point where from one day to the next, getting on a plane and leaving, I had heard a voice that said, go now. And I feel like I had been being prepared to hear that for a very, very long time. It's like all of the, everything that had been happening in my life had been preparing me for this moment to leap. And I really equate it to the Carlos Castaneda books.
Okay.
Which I had read years before this. I mean, so we're going back 34 years that I left Miami. But prior to that, so my daughter was 5 when I left Miami, but shortly, either before I had her or after, I think it was actually when I was pregnant with her or my son, I can't remember now, but I was reading the Carlos Castaneda books, and it talked about making that kind of leap. Right? Right. And so I just felt like it was like this window that opens, like a vortex or a window that opens, and it's like it only stays open for so long. So it was like I could just feel that this window was opening. It's like that a lot as in our opportunities, right? It's like a window of opportunity opens, and you can take it. I mean, that's the entrepreneurial spirit, is to leap at opportunity.
Seize the moment. Seizing the moment.
Carpe diem. That's where I met my current husband, was at a place called Carpe Diem. So
there you go.
So I do feel like I was being prepared to hear that voice when that window opened.
Okay. All right. And that's actually one of the questions that I like to ask, is regarding preparation. But I want to get a little bit more into the experience itself. So there was a knowing, you knew that you would meet a shaman healer, right?
Well, I don't know that I knew. We never know, so we make the prayers. It's like every thought is a prayer, and we can make the prayers, but we never know in what form or what time they're going to be answered. They're always answered. But we don't always know in what form and what time. And I think the preparation is just to know that you've made the prayer. So regardless of the time or what it looks like, to be able to say yes.
Okay. And so there was a request in the universe, if we could say it like that, in a prayer, because at that moment in time, you also were experiencing a sickness or an illness. Okay.
Yeah, I had been sick with allergies for so much of my life, and it had gotten to the point where an allergy attack would turn into a cold, would turn into bronchitis, and I just was this vicious cycle that I was caught in, of just being sick all the time. And it was not good.
Okay. And can you share, because I want to be as specific, I guess is just the best word, as specific as possible in these experiences, and not mysterious at all, because the goal of this is to really just kind of like show humanity how these intuitive experiences happen, what happens leading up to them, what happens inside of the experience itself, and then also what happens to you in your life after the experience, like in an integration time, as well as to people who are close to you. And it sounds like in this moment of this, highly impactful leap that you took, like we get to see really clearly all those things. And so I just wanted to have the invitation out there to be as specific and as long-winded as you want to be in really sharing the details, the feelings, the sensations, the ideas, the thoughts, the trepidation, the nervousness, the fear, if there was any, on really experiencing these things, because we're really just here being humans inside of these really wonderful, impactful intuition in our lives, and just trying to be super real about what it feels like. I mean, I was scared as shit, or I was, so elated that I couldn't contain myself, like whatever it all was, from the far end to the spectrum all the way to the other end. So just permissioning the space with all of that.
Well, I think we're very powerful. And when I met this particular person, I had been aware of his work for a while. He was a rather famous dude, and admired his work. And we ended up working on a project together. And it was during that project, this was before we met or fell in love, we just had worked on a particular project together. But I remember myself thinking when I was on the phone with him, God, I wish he were available. I wish I was available. This is the kind of person that I would like to be married to. This is the kind of person that I would like to be with. Just in my head, just
interesting.
Starting to have that desire. So it was a rising of, of desire for something more in my life.
Right.
And I didn't know anything. I mean, he worked with his wife at the time. They were quite famous. They were writing books. They were doing workshops. Everything looked great on the surface. So, but it was just me starting to feel like I'm unhappy in my marriage. I want something more. This is the kind of person that I would like to be in a relationship with. So it was like I sent out this desire, and then the prayer came later, because then he actually came, because of this project that we were working on together. He actually came to Miami so that we were together physically. I mean, I had met him physically twice before, but it hadn't, things kind of go in a process, right? So the third time when he came to Miami was when I learned about his struggling marriage.
Okay.
And when he learned about my struggling marriage. So desire for something more, and then just, I had put him on a pedestal, so I really felt like insecure. There was a lot of insecurity for me, and an unworthiness, like who am I to think I could be with somebody like that, kind of thing. Sure. And so all of those feelings came up, but there was a lot of guidance along the way. I mean, just lots of guidance. But I think at the point of the leap was just a tremendous, tremendous amount of heartache and fear and just confusion. I mean, I just remember how confused I felt. And then there were signs that came in those moments of confusion. And I think when I started out by saying how powerful we are, is that if we learn to trust ourselves, we are always being guided. We do have a navigation system, if we learn to pay attention to it. And I had a friend show up, and that would be too long of a story to tell, because he was very significant in my life, but he showed up in the middle of that confusion.
Okay.
To say to me, I mean, it was on the side of the road. It was like he was going this way and I'm going this way. We hadn't seen each other in a while. We pulled over on the side of the road, and he went to his car and he got this hawk feather, and he brought this hawk feather over and he held it on my heart. And he said to me, follow your heart. Right?
Right.
And because of our history and what we had been through together, this friend, it was just the sign that I needed, right?
Right.
At the time. And yeah, something as simple as that. Just follow your heart. Your heart, the mind might be confused, but the heart isn't confused.
Right. And I was just going to say that, it seems simple in concept to follow your heart, but actually the mind is a powerful tool that often will be quick and faster than the language of the heart, and will override the heart. Like it'll just plow over it with even just the frequency that it operates at, has been my experience with mind heart kind of situations. And there is a practice in slowing the mind down so you can not override the heart.
That's what so much of my work is about now in the Chinese medicine that I teach, is heart mind. And how to, in Chinese medicine, they don't see a separation between heart mind. It is one thing. Mm-hmm. So that we don't have a model for mental illness in Western medicine like they do in Eastern medicine. And in Eastern medicine, the source of all mental illness is a heart-mind disconnect.
I see. And what Chinese medicine do you study or know?
Well, I'm an herbalist, so I'm teaching Chinese medicine from the perspective of a Western herbalist, and what I teach is Chinese 5-element theory.
Okay, the 5-element theory. Very good. And I wanted to back up for a second to actually kind of touch desire. Desire is such an interesting longing and emotion and a nuanced feel energetically. And I just wanted to see if your experience of desire in this instance and maybe other instances, and to kind of find if this is a common thread. My experience of desire and exploration of desire, even with other people who are willing to, as friends, really nuancedly qualify what desire feels like. One of the things that came up about desire was that it becomes a beacon, like a freaking lighthouse sending out a signal, for the ships to come home to and to find. So desire itself becomes this really amplified experience of an energetic pulse, an energetic vibration, whatever it is, but that really extends itself out beyond the body as this like beacon thing, whereas another kind of nuanced emotion or elicited response isn't as much a beacon. And I just wanted to check in with you on that to see if it was a similar feeling of a beacon, or would you describe it differently?
No, I like the way you just described it. I think that's really cool. Yeah, okay. I like that, because it's a magnetic thing. It's going to pull us toward that which we're seeking, or that which is seeking us. Ultimately, we're looking, we are seeking that which is seeking us. So it just kind of opens up that it's like a navigation pathway, right? I like the way you described it. I think, just like the ship looking for, and it's funny because this poem that this person I'm talking about wrote to me in our first separation after we had become lovers was called Bright Sea Bright. And it was about walking lonely on a coral shore. And, so the image of the lighthouse is a really good one. I think it does illuminate a path.
And I'm actually, as just a little aside, in the presence of desire, I have a strong key into manifestation. And, that's a key interest for myself and who I'm about and what I help teach people how to do, actually. And it's just occurring to me as well that, really finding truth in desire for the thing that you are seeking, like you mentioned, really has everything to do with being a cornerstone of manifestation toolkit. Like, how does it work? You have to find that cornerstone of desire and in a way, feed, nurture, acknowledge, accept, all those kind of things so that it can come through.
Well, it's connected to passion. It's a fire. It's a fire element, is like desire and passion to fuel. You need to have passion to fuel your desires. Right? So
yes. Very cool. Well, super awesome. And then
And it's different than lust. And it's different than lust, right?
Exactly. It totally is. Yep.
We don't want to be running around chasing all of these desires so that we're just kind of lost in the world of, then you get one, there's no fulfillment in that. So I'm talking about the kind of desire that brings fulfillment.
Exactly. And remember, I was talking about having the nuanced awareness of these things. And yes, exactly right. Passion is a thread. Lust is a thread. Desire is a thread. And they actually, when you stop and pay attention to them and even inquire about them, ask them to show you more about themselves, being lust, passion, desire, they teach you about who they are.
Ooh, so I've got goosebumps now, because we could break that down with this particular scenario at the choice point, which is, am I lusting after this person? Am I lusting after, power and significance? Or, am I, or is my desire for, a better way of life? And, what is it that I'm actually having passion about? Am I, passionate about, not necessarily this person, but about the lifestyle that he could give me and what what it represented. And so all of that was going through my mind. I mean, hindsight, now is one thing, but I didn't know, that's part of the confusion at that time. Is like, I think all of those things were going on for me, because that's how we refine ourselves, is by moving through these experiences. So it was all there. So in weighing it out, it was like, how do I make the right choice? Because, obviously I don't want to be just following lust, because that's not, that's not going to, we know how that's going to work out. And,
right. It's not, I would say it's not a complete enough, stamp, if you will, of a whole energetic, movement.
Yeah. Like a better term. So I had all of those things going on. And that's why in that confusion, it's good to have these signs that because I trusted that pulled me through, then I could learn all of those lessons of lust and passion and desire, and fine tune my navigation system so that I could get even clearer about how to keep, following the next sign, because I always like to give the metaphor of, that every thought is a prayer, because if we make the prayers and then spirit comes and says, well, here's the answer to your prayer, and we say, oh, well, that's not what I think it should look like, or the timing's not right, or, then you can't get the next piece. It's like you have to pick up the first piece in order to be able to walk to the next point to get the next piece, right? And if you say no to the universe, it's like, well, I prayed for this, but I didn't think it was going to look like that. The universe can't give you the next piece.
Right. And I often call that the breadcrumb trail,
It is a breadcrumb trail. And I call it being on, on the deer trail, Thea summer deer. It's like being on the deer, following the, if you're in the woods, you can, it's tricky to see those deer trails, because they're, they're kind of low and they're narrow, because it's just where the hooves go through. It's not, the upper brush, because they just brush that away. So you have to have eyes for that, so you have to have eyes for the crumb trail.
Right. And I think what we're hitting on here is really like that there is oftentimes, especially when we're unpracticed in our level of awareness of emotional things happening, they just get all jumbled up like a big ball of yarn. And it would even be a simile of, or metaphor of, a big ball of yarn with different colors of yarn. But actually, if you notice the different colors of yarn and start unwinding each color represents a thing. And in this case, one color is representing passion, another color is representing lust, another color is representing desire. And so we grow the muscle of awareness to be able to unwind that ball of yarn and get clarity. And oftentimes, until we're a little more experienced with it, we don't know how to do that. we're acting as best we can with as much as we know in the moment. And then hindsight is a 2020 thing. After you get through it, sometimes you're able to then tease it out, and sometimes you can tease it out actively, but that does take practice to be able to tease it out actively.
Practice. And that takes trust or faith or whatever you want to call it. It's like, just have faith in the process, because, you know, it takes, you know, experience after experience after experience. I mean, really, that's all we're going to take with us when we leave here.
Right.
You know, the love we shared and the experiences that we've had. And I love that metaphor of the yarn, and the way that I've seen it for myself, because I've done different craft, you know, I've been a crafty person. I like beading and weaving and all of that. Is like, it's like weaving a rug. There's a pattern, right? So and that's what also Chinese five element is the study of patterns. So it's like you're weaving this rug, you're weaving this pattern into this rug, and sometimes you can't see that you put the wrong color into that pattern until you get a little bit further into the pattern.
Okay.
And then you see it, right? And at that point, you have to pull all that out, and weave.
Oh, lovely.
You know? So, you know, it's okay, you know, when you get to that place in your life, nothing is a mistake. It's like we put so much shame. I mean, I'm really here to heal a lineage of shame. And it's like, there's no shame and blame in any of that. It's just like, okay, you just pull it out and you reweave it. We're constantly reweaving the cloak of the ancients. And it's like chop wood, carry water, you know, we're going to be working on ourselves the whole time we're here.
Right, totally. And I actually just felt like we just stepped down the ladder and we just got deeper in that moment with talking about being here to heal a lineage of shame and reweaving the cloak of the ancients. Like how beautiful a marriage of words that is, and each one having a weight and a vibration of its own independently, but then whoa, like what does that thing do together? Like, wow, I just feel like I need to take a moment with the weight of that as it like ripples through my system. Like, whoa, we're going on a ride, girl, me and you right now. So I don't know if you want to talk about it or say maybe a little short thing about it, but let's see what might be available with regards to healing a lineage of shame. And is that feeling like that's what you're here to do, is that connected to this episode and intuitive experience that you had in your life at all?
Absolutely, because I was leaving my family of origin where all of that came through.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit more about the feeling that you have as it's connected to being the one? Because they do say, right? Have you heard this? That they say the one who does the healing in the lineage basically heals everything before and sets the stage for everything after. You've heard that?
Yeah, I completely believe that, you know, and even before many things happened in this process, is that I knew that I was here to end a cycle of abuse. Okay. I didn't know how deep and wide and far that was when I stepped onto that path. And so, you know, but I just knew that, you know, as I became more aware of certain abuses that, you know, were happening in my family and through my family, that I was here to end that cycle. But then as that progressed, you know, as I progressed on that path, and it became really a much bigger thing. And I've worked with many shamans over the years, but one in particular, one of the more recent ones is a Lukumi. I call him a shaman. He would never call himself a shaman. He's a Lukumi priest, and Oba of his religion, and very, very, very high up in that organization internationally. And he is a diviner. His birth was divined, and one of the ways that he divines is through reading the cowrie shells. And so, so now we're talking about divination, which is a system, right? There's many different systems of divination. His particular system was in reading the cowrie shells. And so when he gave me that reading, he said, you are here as the last of through 9 generations, and it all ends here with you.
Uh-huh. And isn't it in numerology, the number 9 is a closure number?
Perhaps.
So. I think it is.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yep. Wow. Very cool.
He just said it all ends here with you.
Okay. And do you feel a resonance with it all ends here with you?
Absolutely.
And do you feel some kind of repatterning, maybe we can say that, of the blueprint for future generations to come?
Yes, and I see it in the work how much work my daughter and I have and continue to do with each other. Okay. So there are no more males in the lineage, so that lineage literally ends. And but I've done a lot of work with my daughter. I mean, we're constantly working on our relationship, and then I have granddaughters. So I see how, I mean, the future's not yet in form, so I don't know what that's going to look like.
Right.
But I do feel like, because I have committed to doing the work that I have done and I'm doing, it gives my daughter permission to do that work, and hopefully ultimately it'll give my granddaughter permission to do that work. It ripples. It
right.
can't not ripple.
Exactly. It's like throwing the stone in the pond. And you are the stone.
A rolling stone.
In the best sense of the word, Okay. So let me ask you this. So you said something just then about, that's the end of the lineage of the males, but couldn't your granddaughter, if your daughter's not going to have any more children, your granddaughter could?
Well, I mean, in the old patriarchy is dying, as we know.
Okay.
And so in the patriarchal system, it was the males. There's always the male who is giving, that has the male lineage to continue that name, that last name. That has ended with this lineage.
Okay. I see what you mean. Okay. Yeah. And
to carry on the name, right?
Right.
And that was part of the story in my family. And I don't know why Spirit wants me to share this, and I don't know where this will go, but my grandmother had 3 girls before she had a male, and they were self-made millionaires. It was really important to have an heir to pass their millions down to, a male heir.
Okay.
3 girls. They just kept trying for the male and the male heir came in mentally retarded. Well, he came in with what we might now call Asperger's.
Okay.
Or, really it was more pronounced. So he was probably more on the autistic spectrum. They've taken Asperger's off the autistic spectrum, but he was probably closer to the, a severe case and closer to an autistic spectrum. We had no word for that back then. We didn't know what that was. They sent him to military school. They did shock treatment. They destroyed his ability to talk and many other things. But so it's been really up in this family of how, they didn't get to have that male to, pass that lineage down to, and what a heartbreak that was for them to then have. My uncle had to be cared for in a home for the whole of the rest of his life. But because they had money, I had this little inheritance from my uncle, which is what I used to produce my music, to produce my first CD. So I have taken it into a creation lineage and used it to create and to, give voice to, emotional and make sense of things that have happened in my life, and hopefully to touch other people's hearts as well.
Right. Yeah. So the lineage piece and even just noticing the cloak of the ancients, much less reweaving the cloak of the ancients, is just a whole thing. And it is important to pay attention to. I actually remember when I was first learning about ancients and ancestors, in an energetic presence way of, it actually is kind of simple in some respects, because my teachers would always tell me when I was first starting, you just ask them to come, like simple like that. And I was just like, what? Like, I really just didn't understand how simple it was. And in so doing, also understanding simultaneously, like, there is a huge power in that request to ask the ancients or to ask the ancestors to come and help you with whatever, a decision, an action, a difficulty that you're having or anything like that. But just to say that, these awarenesses from the lineage before, even some would say, and I agree, from the lineages after, are all already available for you now. And you can tap into their knowledge, resource, wisdom, experiences, all that kind of stuff, because my belief is that we do live in this multidimensional reality where present, past, future are all kind of like stacked on top of each other. And it becomes about piercing that veil into the other worlds for gaining insight and access from when it becomes too much for you.
They're already standing behind you.
Yeah.
They're all already there standing behind you. And we are the future ancestors.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Ooh, chills. Ooh.
So it's
yes,
pretty cool when we can stand in that knowing of those resources that are available to us. We can check in both with all that has come before us as well as all that is yet to come. I mean, even though I say the future is not yet informed, there is a future self that is informing me now. And I can look back and see some of the choices that I made along the path and know that who I am today as that future self was informing. That's that guidance.
Totally. And I'm smiling because it's just like, woof, that is such deep, awesome work and knowledge and permission to even, have the mind be open to those concepts. So, whoever might be appreciating and listening to this later, just know that if it's a new concept for you, that, there are many of us out here who believe in this multidimensional access, and it is, and will always be available. And it's just a practice of coming into an unconditioned place and an unknown space that these things can be available for you too. We got in deep there for a minute, so I'm going to bring us back out a little bit to kind of keep us on the track of the interview and everything. With regards to, we have this experience you're sharing about taking this absolute leap, which is, in some ways a little unimaginable. Because in that, did you leave the family that you had created behind?
Well, I actually got on the plane with my 2 children.
Okay.
So I fled
okay.
with my 2 children.
Okay.
And, but it's a bit of a long story.
Sure.
They did not remain with me. They were taken from me.
Okay. So that's kind of where I was headed to, was like, how has this leap that you very consciously, and, even at that young-ish age of 30, having this experience happen, how did it impact your life? And then we can just really focus on the life of your children if you want to, with regards to making this leap and following the intuition.
Well, it's such a big story, Crystal. And, I know we were trying to focus on just one event.
Sure.
But what that one event led to, and why I was put on that path, was to find the truth of my ancestry. So I had been told that I was adopted. My whole, I was told I was adopted, and I was given a story around my adoption.
Okay.
And so when let's see, how many years ago has it been now? Since 2019. So 7 years ago now, so not so many years ago, very recent. 7 years ago, when my mother passed away, it was a big deal for me because I was adopted. I didn't know who my biological mother was. And so I was losing the only mother that I had ever known, knowing that I didn't know who my mother was, and biologically speaking. So I really was, grieving her even before she passed. She was 91 when she passed. And I remember the whole year when she was 90 of just going, she's not going to live forever. I mean, she was healthy. She was riding her tricycle and everything, but, she's not going to live forever. So I'm just feeling that coming, right? And she wasn't in the ground for 24 hours when I found out that she was my biological grandmother.
Okay.
And I was raised in a family that I had no idea that I had any relationship to whatsoever. Okay. And learned that my sister had me when she was barely 14. My father was my biological father, and my mother was my biological grandmother. And there's a lot of intuitive pieces that happen before, during, and after on that journey of learning that truth of my lineage.
Wow. And so then taking the leap moment when you were 30, how does that tie back into this discovery, a recent discovery to, in your 50s?
I would have never learned the truth had I not followed that path. If I had stayed in my family of origin, I would have never learned that truth, because there was a lot of unveiling, many years of very, just one veil at a time being lifted, one veil at a time being lifted. It was a miracle that I even ever learned that truth, because it was so deeply buried and my family had money, so they could pay whoever to cover up whatever in whatever ways it needed covered up. And it was deeply, deeply buried secret.
Wow.
So, and even though I was digging, I didn't know that's what I was digging for.
Sure. Yeah.
People would ask me, "Oh, don't you want to know who your real mother is?" And I would say, "Well, no, the mother that raised me is my real mother. She's the only mother I've ever known." And I really am not that interested in finding, because when I got on a spiritual path, I got on a spiritual path very young. I was 19 when I received knowledge from an East Indian guru and started meditating. Even before that, I was into Aleister Crowley and alchemy. I mean, I've always been on a spiritual path. So, in doing all of that, I knew that my soul had chosen to be in the family that I was in. I didn't doubt that. So when people say, "Well, don't you want to know?" I would say, "Well, no, because my soul chose the family that I'm in. And I feel like if I really, went looking for that one, that it would be like opening a Pandora's box. And I don't know that I want to do that."
Right.
So that intuitive self knew that it would be opening a Pandora's box, which in fact it was, because all manner of evil flew out once that was open. So, and what lies at the bottom is hope. But at the same time, intuitively, I felt that it would be if I pursued it. So even though I was a spiritual seeker and digging, I didn't know that's what I was digging for until I hit.
Right. The gold.
It is the gold, right? Because it's my birthright. It's my identity in a way, it's like you can't be attached to your story. The story's always changing.
Right.
So the treasure that I hit was the treasure of finding that lineage, the truth of my ancestral lineage.
Yes, I see. And I think that is the experience of intuition and the breadcrumbs. We had mentioned breadcrumb trail before, or the trail of the deer before, is that you only know about the step that's in front of you, but that there's something propelling you into that direction in the first place. And so the drive then becomes, even though it's yet unknown, it exists, that there's something at the end of that thing,
Well said. and drive, because we talked about, passion and desire. Well, let's add drive to it. So yeah,
Indeed. Yeah,
there was a calling. I was responding
exactly.
to a calling, and and I have a lot of drive, and I don't know, I'm just a person who has a lot of drive anyway. But yeah, very well said.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when we go down these paths or these trails or, these compelling things, that's a part of the thing itself, is like there's something compelling that's irresistible about taking the step, digging the first, shovelful of dirt into wherever. Yeah, you can have so many analogies about what that is. But the point is that there's a drive, there's a passion that keeps you on that path, because without it, you might just, fizzle out, if you will, and lose
it's called depression and just apathy.
Right. Very good. Okay,
and
cool.
Look at what you've done, Crystal. You've done it yourself. Look at the leaps you've taken to be where you are and who you are and doing what you're doing, and now bringing this more into conscious expression and conversation. I mean, this one.
Indeed. I mean, I'm living in Mexico right now because I'm discovering why. I used to say, I don't know why the hell I'm here, but we're just figuring that out. But actually, there is a push behind me that I feel is why I'm here. And I have changed the perspective from I don't know why, which is kind of a powerlessness approach, to I'm discovering why, which is a more empowered saying of why I'm here. So I am living the intuitive human life right now in Mexico, figuring that out. And, one day I will find that gold, and maybe it's tomorrow or maybe it's in, 20 years from now, who knows, but I'm here in full discovery process for sure.
Beautiful.
Totally. So I feel like, I feel like it totally just got tied together when you shared the piece about, the death of it got a little confusing because it went fast, but it was your grandmother, right? Actually, but you thought she was your mom and you called her mom the whole life. I feel like when you explain that, the explanation of, being here, as the healer of the lineage of shame just, came together for me, when you shared that. And so it kind of feels in the sense of explaining this intuitive experience and kind of, intricately in the beginning, taking the leap, but then what was that? 27 years later, from age 30 to about 57-ish, where was that the age that your mom, should we call her mom, passed?
Yeah. I mean, she's,
okay.
I don't reframe that. She's still my mother, even though she was my biological grandmother.
Perfect. So then that was a 27-year excavation, if you will, just to put that in perspective, and not knowing one step in front of the other, you're just taking the path and the walk, and then for it all to kind of come to a point of conclusion or resolution. Conclusion kind of sounds like too close, but maybe resolution of like, wow, I finally understand, all these things that I've been after.
Oh my gosh. It's like, you can imagine how many things started to make sense and never made sense.
Totally.
And that's why I think what you're doing is so important, is if we can learn to trust our intuition.
Yes.
And take that next step, and trust that it is leading us somewhere. There is something calling to us that is directive.
And it's unwinding it really came together for me when you used the word shame. It's unwinding everything that was hidden before. And, that ball of yarn that was, locked into the DNA or the lineage or whatever it is now, in this like yes, exactly.
Loosened. And so you asked the question about how do we heal this? I think that one of the ways that we do that is by telling our stories.
Exactly.
Because now I'm telling, and again, not to be attached to the story is always changing, and it's always, my story, but at the same time, I'm getting to tell a part of my sister's story that she never got to tell. She took
Mm-hmm.
that with her. My mother took it with her to the grave. My father took it with him to the grave, and she took it with her to the grave.
Wow. Wow. That's so profound. Like, I don't even know what to say with all that.
I mean,
We are amazing humans, man, living, following these crazy ass tracks and stuff
trails.
into like, yeah, exactly. Like little rabbit holes and wormholes sometimes, and just like black holes. Like, it's just like so intense. And, it takes a courage to say yes to that, and to continue to say yes to some stuff that just seems super freaking wild and crazy,
And courage of the heart. Courage is of the heart, right? And so we started talking about this from the beginning of, have that heart mind connection. And
I love it. I love it. Okay. So then I think, like, with the experience side of this intuition and this trail of amazing family lineage discovery, we can just call it, that it probably would you say, well, let me just ask you and not just say it for you, but is there anything more actually in this experience, as we're coming to a close on this specific experience as it relates to your 27-year later resolution, before we get into kind of like how you operate as in your daily life, or common threads of intuition, and things that are going to basically take us out of the energy of this space? Anything else you need to feel you feel called to share in this?
I don't think so. I think it's been tremendous healing. It's healing, as it's like, as I heal, you heal, right? You heal, I heal. So it's just my contribution to do that one, and to actually learn, one, what forgiveness is. And I tend to subscribe to the radical forgiveness theory that really there was nothing to forgive, because it's, there's so much more that I understand now about all of it. And then to come back to radical self-love. I think that is, so when we heal that shame, or when as I heal that shame, it's allowing me to come into a place of radical self-love. And that's also been one of the themes of my life, and is to be able to do that one.
Very beautiful. I like that. It's kind of a landing of, there's such intensity in the, discovery process. Even I felt it of, all these, took a ride with you there, but to come into, a landing of forgiveness and self-love through it all is super beautiful, soft landing. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, then let me ask you these other things that I feel like are important, just as humans living inside of this, these experiences that we have intuitively. Would you say that you have any common threads in your life that allows for intuitive experiences in general, and however you have those experiences, to be more available to you than not? So again, the question is, have you noticed any common threads in your life that allows for intuitive experiences to be more available to you than not?
Well, I think of, intuitive awareness as being very connected to psychic energy.
Okay.
And so the way that I keep that open, one of the biggest ways that I do that is through music.
Okay.
So it keeps, it keeps me connected to, that voice, giving voice, call it giving voice to the mystery.
Okay.
Of listening, right? That deeper listening.
Right.
And then an expression, giving form to the deeper listening through the expression of music. So music is one of the ways. The other ways is by working with plants. So, our medicine is never any further than we are right now. So when you learn to listen to the plants, there's another deep listening piece that's happening there.
Right.
That keeps me open. Previously or earlier, maybe even in the very beginning, it was the animals that taught me. My father My father owned a zoo, and I got to be around a lot of exotic animals. And they had a knowing or a perception or a heightened sense, heightened senses that just in hanging out with them, you start to tune in.
I see. More of the, some people are using the word instinct, right? When we're talking about intuition, just a natural instinct of whatever it is. And so being around animals, maybe we could use that word instinct, that's how they're in the world instinctually.
Could be.
Okay.
I had, thought about that one. I think of the instinctual self as being more of the wild self.
Okay.
Closer to a wilder self. And I used to breed wolf hybrids. So I lived with high percentage of wolf hybrids for a lot of years. And, I feel like as human, I haven't thought about this that much, but, that intuition is a higher development from the instinctual self. So, it's almost like the reptilian brain is going to act on the instinct from the instinctual self, but the more conscious, or I guess in Hawaiian medicine, they call it I forget what they call it, but, we have all these different levels of consciousness, right? The
right.
subconscious, the unconscious,
right.
And that part of our work here is evolving consciousness, and that intuition is a huge piece of is developing and evolving consciousness.
Got you. Okay.
Bringing what is hidden into consciousness. Because intuition, right, is like, I'm thinking of that as like, the hidden messages, or, or the voice within, or, so it's about bringing it to consciousness so that we can have more command of that faculty that maybe the animals don't have, but in that sense. But it was observing the animals and being around the animals and tuning into that instinctual self of theirs that has that heightened sensory awareness,
right?
My senses to then, pay attention to other things that could be felt but not seen.
Right. Yeah. And felt, I think that you just said it can be felt but not seen. Those are the things we're talking about, for
or
sure.
Necessarily heard,
Yeah, and there are many tracks for sure. So then the common threads you're saying are music for you that helps keep the psychic connection open, listening to the plants. I think that could be a whole nother conversation, especially with your area of expertise. So we won't even open up that can right now, but I reserve the right to ask you for another interview talking about that. And then, of course, animals themselves, keeping you connected, basically, is how we're talking about this. Very good. Okay. And then I think I already know the answer to this, but I'm just going to ask it anyways. Would you say you are a highly sensitive person in general?
Yes.
Me too. Raise your hand. And which intuitive track then, as you kind of like live your life, because clearly you are a highly sensitive person and very intuitive prone, and using that in your daily life, which intuitive track or tracks would you say are more pronounced in your life, meaning the clairvoyance? And I guess for right now, I'll just say them, and just for the sake of data analysis, which is I am also doing that as a part of this process. But clairvoyance, which is seeing, clairgustance is tasting, clairolfactory is smelling, clairsentience is feeling, and then clairaudience is hearing. But then also I'm tracking separately a kinesthetic awareness, which would be different than clairsentience, and then the dreams and visions, which I would also reserve the right to talk more about with you later, because I haven't met many dreamers, actually, and I'm a dreamer. So I really want to get into discovery about dreams and visions. But yeah, so out of all the 5 clairs, it's basically all the senses there, and then kinesthetic track, and then dreams and visions. Which one are the most pronounced in your life?
Gosh, it's different at different times. Sometimes I'll hear, sometimes I'll see, sometimes I'll feel, sometimes I mean, I do have to say that dreams and visions are a very big one for me.
Okay.
And maybe that's probably the biggest ones. And the vision being, clairvoyant, where I'm seeing.
Right.
And it can be a waking vision. It can be a sleeping vision. It can be in that in-between place, vision where I'm in that, not quite awake or not quite asleep.
Sure.
And I used to do a lot of problem solving in my sleep. I used to work a very demanding job at a radio station, doing all of the traffic control. And it's like a freaking Chinese puzzle, man, making all that fit. And
right.
I would sit at that computer and not be able to get something to fit for, to save my life. And I would go home and it would come to me in the dream time. I would be shown exactly where to put that. And I'd go back in the morning, fire up the computer, and sure as hell, that's where it fit. So,
very good.
It's like just calming all that down and just being open. And there's been so many things that have been shown to me. So I guess I'm going to say clairaudient, because I have been shown things that there is no way that I could know in this dimension.
And shown in what way? Like, did you hear it? Because that would be clairaudience.
See it.
Okay, clairvoyance. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, I've seen things that there's no way that I could have known in this dimension.
Sure. Exactly. And that's exactly what I think the clairvoyance experience is. It's that hidden thing, like in some other dimension coming through that's not in this tangible reality. Whereas dreams and visions, like you're explaining, is, it is in this physical reality. It is happening to you in the physical reality, but also gives you access to this physical reality in most ways. But there are dreams that happen that are totally like super far out there, but that's why I want to get into it as well.
Well, there's remote viewing, which is essentially what happened in that dream I had about the apartment.
Right.
To me, that's remote viewing, and I have had a lot of those experiences in my life.
Me as well.
We have it later confirmed that was in fact something that
exactly.
Right. And have information shown to me that, again, there's no way that I could have known that in this dimension, but then at a later date, that's exactly the truth of what I was shown.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. Well, I can't wait to talk more about dreams, visions, remote viewing, because I am so down with all that stuff, because that's a direct connection that I have with using intuition as well. So then would you say that with those stronger paths of intuition, that intuition guides your daily life?
The way that I give words to that is that spirit guides my daily life.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of different ways, I guess, of, words are so limited, right? It's like, is that intuition? Is that my higher self? Is that, whatever you want to call it? But, I am a woman being guided.
Okay.
And that the way it makes sense for me is that it's spirit that is guiding me.
Right. Right.
Which you could say really is just my higher self. God, all that is.
Right. I mean, there's so many maps. Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, there is a guidance system, and we do have a navigation system that we all come in with. If we would listen to it and pay attention to it and trust it, that will guide us in our daily lives. So I am navigating my life trusting that inner guidance.
Perfect. And I love that you put it in your words, and that's exactly what this is about too. I have my words in maps, and you have your words in maps, and we want to know what feels right and good for you. So being a woman that is guided by spirit is totally perfect, and I love that too. Yeah. So one final question that I am asking everybody who I have the privilege of doing these interviews with is, and it'll kind of wrap us up here, but do you feel like spirit, universe, intuition, whatever the word is that guides you in your life, and in this case, spirit, is available to anybody or only special magical people?
Everybody, absolutely, unequivocally, it is available to all of us. And I love this analogy that a meditation teacher taught me once, and that is, it's like God is all that is. What are you going to call it? Is holding us in the palm of his hand.
Okay.
And so it's sort of like we're always there, right? But we don't see. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of opening our eyes and seeing that we are being held, in this creation. Uh-huh. So, Creator never lost sight of us. We lost sight of Creator.
Right. Okay. And in losing sight or gaining sight, choice by choice, poco a poco, as they say here in Mexico, takes practice, takes some compelling drive, takes wanting and desire and openness.
Desire. Yeah, I think that's that desire, the desire to know God, or whatever you want to call it, the desire to know these other realms, the desire to, seek and find whatever that is that we're seeking. I mean, I was called to be a midwife. I delivered babies for 9 years. I didn't know that calling was my seeking the healing of my own. I mean, I knew that I was healing my own birth, my unknown origins, because every time I'm catching a baby, there's no doubt where that baby's coming from, right?
Right.
So I'm healing that over and over and over. I'm placing a baby in a mother's arms, where I was never placed in my mother's arms. So I'm healing that over and over and over again. But it was a calling. We're being called if we could just listen.
Right. And what I'm kind of getting in this moment of, sharing that is like, imagine if everything we did, every single life choice we are making, whether you know it or not, is for our own resolution, our own unwinding, our own healing as we have come into this world. Just imagine that is the purpose of every step you take, and how powerful that could become.
I believe that. And I think it's really important that we imagine that, because I believe that that's really real. I feel like the human being is a self-healing mechanism, and that we are always, we're always seeking that healing in everything that we choose. It's just, to me, it's like a given, right, that we are always, whatever it may look like a mess.
Yeah, totally.
And, but when you take judgment away and you just allow, trust the process, is that we are always seeking, like a heat-seeking missile, we're always seeking that healing and that balance, and that, that is the nature of, that is the nature of nature.
Yes, right.
That balance. So whatever we're doing, it's always so if we can evolve consciousness and bring it into consciousness, well, why did we choose that? So we're always making the best choices that we can, given the resources that we have to make those choices. But if we can increase those resources, we can make better choices, and then we just keep becoming more aware of, why did I do that? Why did I choose to do that? Or why am I choosing to have this experience over and over? And how's that working for me?
Right, totally. No, honestly, I feel like, ooh, the energy's pumping up again. We can totally, we're about to launch into somewhere else right now.
Be continued.
To be continued, for sure. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your amazing experiences. And obviously we have way more to talk about, so we'll put a bookmark into all that. So thank you very much for the interview.